Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Making History. My name is Brian.
And I'm Katie.
And we are the Hesses. Katie, how are you?
Hello. Doing good. How are you doing?
I'm good. Based on the title of this episode, let's talk about some things that we see parents do sometimes that feels to us a little bit maybe dysfunctional,
Sure.
unhealthy.
So fun.
It seems like, and this can happen for a few different reasons, so we'll talk about those. But sometimes between like a mom and a dad, there can be sort of a, I don't know if you want to call it like a competitive spirit
Yeah.
in a sense.
Yep.
Competition maybe to see who can be more liked by the kids.
Who's going to be the favorite?
Who's the favorite?
Who the kid runs to when something goes wrong. And
Yes. Who do they go to when they want something because they know that parent is more likely to say yes.
Yep.
And there's going to be maybe a little bit of that naturally, but as we're going to talk about, I think there are a few things that it's important that we work hard to avoid. And even when I say like things that may happen naturally, like the kids will naturally go to you when they get hurt.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. Like the nurturing. If they have a nurturing
If they need comfort.
Nurturing. That's probably not a word. A nurturing need. They come to me. But like for playtime and like, there's definitely other things. But
Yeah.
like playtime is
And
like the main one. Like if it's Legos, it's like I don't even exist.
And I have.
Well, you're great, but also I need dad.
So, yeah, like in some ways, I maybe am favored in like the arena of play.
Yes.
But I think that is more naturally like a dad thing than a mom thing.
Right.
And there's statistics and there's stuff behind that.
Yes.
But
yeah,
kids,
that's like their main like happy chemicals come from getting like hugs and cuddles from a mom. And then the same amount comes from like playtime, roughhousing with dad.
Yeah.
So it's like that's where they get their like, is it oxytocin? I can never
I don't
remember
know
the
if
name
it's
of the
that
thing.
one. Maybe it's dopamine,
Dopamine.
serotonin.
Yeah. Whatever those good old body chemicals.
I'm not exactly a neuroscientist, but I do know that there's a lot of research that indicates just what you're saying, that the same reaction that happens in a kid's brain when they get comforted and nurtured by mom is the same thing that happens when they get thrown around and wrestled by dad.
Yep.
Which
And I
is
have to remember that
fascinating.
too whenever I get bypassed for play because I'm like, hey, I'm fun. Let me play. And they're like, ha ha ha. Where's dad?
Yeah. So there is a degree to where some of that will happen naturally.
Yeah.
But that's not exactly what we're talking about in this episode.
Right.
So what we're talking about in this episode is the development of certain roles within parenting, where it's like good cop, bad cop type thing,
Yeah.
where it's like I do things to maybe like undermine you and your authority, and in an effort to like get the kids to like me more or to see me more favorably.
Yeah.
And sometimes that does happen. And a lot of this comes from two things. One, we recently did some premarital counseling with some friends who just got married,
Yep. Woohoo.
which was super fun. Had the wedding the other day.
Yep.
It was awesome.
It was awesome.
And anyways, in that, we talked a little bit about this. But also there is a verse in Matthew 12:25 where Jesus says that a kingdom that's divided cannot stand. I'll paraphrase. A kingdom that's divided cannot stand. And he says the same thing about a house. A house that's divided cannot stand.
Right.
I've just been thinking about that and just want to bring maybe a little more like language to what it could look like for a house to be divided and why I think it's unhelpful and why I think it's really important that parents are unified in their approach, in their establishing of values and boundaries and methods of discipline and all that. So let's talk about the good cop, bad cop scenario.
All right.
There are two ways that are pretty obvious to me in which those roles might get developed between parents.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say, for example, I'm dealing with like some insecurity, or maybe we haven't learned about like the natural roles that we were just talking about with mom and dad, to where like kids will prefer one over the other for certain things. And that's natural. They're actually meant to.
Right.
It's normal. It's how...
That's where like the natural giftings are in each parent. And
which, as a side note, is why we think it's important that kids need both a mom and a dad.
Yes.
Because mom has something that dad doesn't. Dad has something that mom doesn't. And two dads can't get the job done. Two moms can't get the job done. And we both have such unique gifts and things that we bring just naturally as like our literal like biological makeup.
Yes. Like I could do the things that you are more naturally gifted at, but the level at which I can do them is never going to be like what is really like required for a healthy functioning family.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those roles are there for a reason.
Didn't mean to go there, but we went there, and now we'll come right back. So, as I was saying, let's say, hypothetically, we don't understand that. Let's say I see the girls going to you for certain things, and I want them to come to me. That could potentially create like a barrier if I allow it to. I could become a little bit resentful, maybe a little jealous, insecure, and for any number of reasons, I could, whether consciously or subconsciously, start to do things to get more favor or to be more liked by the kids than you are. And that could look like something as simple as you telling them, like, no, you can't have a brownie. We're about to have dinner in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And I hear that and I'm like, hey, like, don't worry about it. You can have a brownie. Go ahead. You know?
Just don't tell mom.
Yeah, don't tell mom. Oh my goodness, that is.
It makes me
that makes me want to slap somebody. Just the thought of that. But that is extremely dysfunctional.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of thing we're talking about. We're not talking about mom and dad naturally developing into the roles that they're meant to.
Right.
I'm talking about, for whatever reason, I want the kids to like me more than they like you. So I'll find the things that maybe you've said no to, and I'll go and I'll totally undermine your authority.
Right.
And basically create in their minds this idea that mom's not really in charge, she doesn't really have authority. Dad's the one who we go to when we want stuff, and he'll say yes.
Yeah.
And that will naturally cause division in your house, and that will only lead to dysfunction.
Right, because that feels really disrespectful to the person who's on the receiving end of the undermining. Like if that were the case in our home, I would feel like really disrespected by you. I feel like I would always have to like be on watch and like on my guard, you know, of like, what's he going to do now? You know, like, is he going to tell them that they can do this when this is actually something that they really can't do? And that was just just super dysfunctional.
Right.
There's no other word for it.
Yeah. Either you'll do that, or maybe you'll start saying yes to everything in an effort to regain what feels like lost favor. So that's no good.
Right.
So that's one way that those kind of good cop, bad cop roles could develop. The other way is if, again, hypothetically, let's say that I am super authoritarian. I'm the angry, harsh, mean dad.
Yeah.
Super punishing. And I will say, I think it probably happens more often to where if somebody's going to fill that role, it's probably dad more than mom.
Right. Yeah, most the classic line, just wait until your father gets home.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
Like, that's when like hell is going to rain down on you.
Yes, exactly. So let's say hypothetically, I've taken that role, and this happens really often where dad becomes very authoritarian, very controlling, very intimidating, and mom, in an effort to bring balance to the home, will swing to the opposite end of the pendulum and become the very soft, overly gentle, overly permissive parent.
Right.
As a way to sort of counteract.
Sure.
And sometimes like moms will even, in a sense, feel like they have to take on this role of like standing kind of in the gap between the kids and the dad.
Yeah.
Of like,
Kind of
almost
being
like
like a
it
protector.
becomes, yes, almost like it becomes their role to, like you said, protect the kids from dad.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not great either.
No.
I think that happens pretty often. And then what happens is you have a mom and a dad who are probably both a little bit too far on the end of the spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
And neither have landed in a very healthy place.
Mm-hmm.
And then the house also feels super divided again
Yes.
because dad is one way, mom is another.
Mm-hmm.
They don't seem to agree on their values,
Right.
on methods of discipline.
Yeah.
And that, I think, creates a really confusing environment for kids.
Absolutely.
And I also want to say in that exact scenario, I don't necessarily like blame mothers for shifting and taking that role.
Sure.
I don't know if you would feel this way. I think I naturally tend to put more of like a higher expectation on fathers if I ever saw that type of dynamic in a home.
Yeah.
I think my initial thought would be like, you have gone way too far on that end of the spectrum.
Right.
Not only are your kids afraid of you, now your wife feels like she has to stand between you and them
Yes.
as the protector.
Yeah, I think in that scenario for sure, because I mean, the father is, it's biblical that the father is the head of the household.
Yeah.
And, so if that is the case, if we are wanting to follow biblical principles, which we do personally, then if that was the dynamic in the household, I would say, well, yeah, of course, like the mom, if I think, things can happen before that dynamic sets in place, conversations can be had, things can be said to, help resolve that situation and that dynamic.
Sure.
But if that doesn't work, those, first efforts have no effect, then I think it makes total sense that the mom would start, naturally as a mom personally, my instinct is to protect my kids.
Right.
And as much as painful as it would be to have to, activate that instinct with your own husband, the father of your children, like if that's what you have to do, then that's what we're made to do.
Yeah.
We're made to protect and be
Right.
mama bear.
Yeah.
So I have a question in light of what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
What would be some strategies that a mom who feels like she's in this place where she is having to kind of take this role as like the protector, standing between the dad and the kids and softening the blows, whatever it looks like. What are some ways that moms in that position can resolve that situation or work to kind of meeting in the middle with her husband?
So I have a couple thoughts. And one of them, I'm going to get a little bit ahead of myself because I want to talk about this more in a minute. But I would, to the best of your ability, one, conversations need to be had.
Yes.
I think that those conversations, if possible, and this is true just of like dealing with any kind of like confrontation or conflict with anybody that you're in a relationship with.
Yeah.
To be prepared to talk about how you feel and your experience.
Yep.
Do your best to use I statements rather than you statements. So because if I'm that husband and that father, it's not going to be helpful for you if I'm feeling attacked.
Yes. Right.
Now it's entirely possible that I am already feeling maybe shame.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't want to be the way that I am, but I don't know how to change. That's possible. Or maybe I just think that I'm doing everything exactly right.
Yeah.
So there could be a few different ways that this plays out. But I know either way, that conversation will go much better if you were to come in with your guard down and communicate in such a way that doesn't cause me to put my guard up.
Right.
You know?
And those I statements look like I am experiencing this, or I am feeling this way. Is there something that we can do together?
I wonder
fill
if.
in the blank.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those kinds of statements and those kinds of questions are way more disarming
Yes. Rather than like, you're doing this and you're making me feel this way.
Yeah.
That puts all the blame there. Whereas, like you said, if you're already feeling shame or stuck or whatever, that just creates a whole other, a whole other set of issues.
The other thing I was going to say is those conversations, as much as possible, need to be had in the absence of kids.
Yes.
So we already talked about this, but one way that division happens in the house is when one parent undermines the authority of the other one in the presence of the kids. And that, again, that can be really confusing for kids.
Yeah.
It can be confusing, and it may leave them not really knowing the power dynamic or the hierarchy of authority, or do I ever really have to listen to mom, or is dad the only one that I have to take seriously? That could create those kinds of questions, and that's really unhelpful.
Yeah.
But if there is a situation where things are not super healthy, super functional, I think that whether it's mom or dad who's needing to confront the other one and have these conversations, I think that you can minimize or put a limit on the unhealth and the dysfunction in the house by having those conversations away from kids.
Sure. Yeah.
Because and this is so hard, and this is a really, really difficult thing to approach and really articulate, because I think there's a lot of nuance. But the Bible is very clear about honoring your father and your mother.
Yeah.
And it feels pretty black and white to me. Now, again, I think there's a lot of nuance and room for conversation as to what exactly that looks like, because some parents are really unsafe.
Yeah.
Some parents are, abusive, and we could go down the list of different things that parents could be, and what it looks like or means to honor them.
Right.
I think that it's important that even when one parent disagrees with the method or the values of the other one, I don't necessarily think that it helps to do anything to further bring dishonor or division, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yep.
So, and that's such a hard thing. That's a hard thing to balance. Maybe we need to have a whole conversation on that sometime. What does it actually mean to honor your parents, especially when they don't act honorably?
Right.
What exactly, how does that look? But for the sake of this conversation, let's talk about me and you and how we have approached some of this.
Yeah.
So we are pretty much on the same page.
Yeah.
Definitely regarding big things, weighty things. We feel very unified.
Yeah.
We feel like we're a team, and that's actually like language that we've used with the kids.
Yeah.
We've communicated hey, mom and dad are a team.
Right.
We need you guys to know that.
Right, because they have tried the ask mom if we don't get the answer we want from her, let's go see what dad says. They've tried that.
They've tried that.
Which is really smart, but also
I get
just
it. I totally get it.
Yep.
And I'm not mad.
Nope.
Just know that you can trust mom, and I'll tell them if Nora says, hey, can I watch a movie? And you say no, and she comes to me, and I don't know what they've watched or what they've been up to that day. And I'm and I find out that they already asked you. Whether or not I want them to watch a movie or whether or not I think it's okay, my natural instinct will be to say, well, mom said no.
Right.
I bet she had a reason. You can trust mom. Mom and I are on a team.
Yes.
My answer is also no.
Right. Yes.
Now, let's say something happens like that where they ask something of you and you either said yes and I wouldn't have said yes, or you say no and I wouldn't have said no.
Yeah.
I can approach that one of three ways.
Okay. Let's hear them.
Number one, I could do the thing we've been talking about where I totally undermine your authority. And I'm like, I know mom said you couldn't watch a show, but you can. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm the cool one.
Right.
You come to me for
Points
this
for
stuff.
dad.
Yeah. Mom's lame. Dad is super cool. Don't worry about it. You don't have to listen to her. You don't have to, That is really dysfunctional. So I'm not ever going to take that approach. Number two, I could just weigh the specific situation. It's probably not, whatever it is, it's probably not a huge thing right now, especially, we talk about this all the time, but our kids are young.
Yeah.
So we're talking about the things they ask for are, can they play video games or watch a show or have a cookie or something like that? Like those are kind of the big
Treats
three.
and screen time are like our main.
Those are the big two
our
right now.
main things right now.
So neither of those are like over the span of, thinking long term. Those are big.
Yeah.
Like moment to moment, day to day, they're not that big of a deal.
Right.
So let's just say they came to you and they said, hey, can I watch a show? And you said yes. And in my head, I'm thinking, I feel like they've already had a good amount of screen time.
Yeah.
So what I'm not going to do is go to them and say, actually, like, mom's wrong. Or you don't need to listen to mom. You listen to me. And I say, and I override your decision. That's not great. I'm not going to do that. So I could just weigh the specific situation and think, okay, is this worth a conversation over? Is it a really big deal that they're watching screen time? I'll weigh that within that specific context of that day, but also I'll think about the week. And I think, like, is this getting out of hand? Like, do Katie and I need to talk about the amount of screen time the kids are having?
Yep.
And if I decide, actually, like, maybe it's just Saturday and we have nothing going on, and maybe we just want to have a chill day and watch a little more TV than we usually do.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, I may say nothing at all. I think, I trust Katie. That's fine.
Yep.
Or, again, maybe it is that thing where, like, I'm kind of thinking about the week and the month, and I'm like, actually, we've gradually been letting screen time get out of hand or treats get out of hand or something like that. And I'm like, I actually want to, like, address that. So what I would do is I would find a time when you and I are away from the kids. And then I would have that conversation.
Right.
And again, I wouldn't come in guns blazing, accusing you and blaming you.
You're doing this, you idiot.
I would probably come with questions. Questions about, how are we doing in this area? Screen time. I may say, like, hey, I've noticed that seems like the kids have been having a lot more screen time than normal. Like, what do you think about that? Or, and I would just open it up like that. Try to keep my guard down. Try not to come in accusatory and blaming so as not to cause you to be defensive.
Yeah, just putting your little feelers out there.
I'm just feeling the situation.
Yeah.
Going to let you know what I'm thinking and experiencing and just wondering if you're on the same page or, And, so you can address that one of three ways. I highly recommend either 2 or 3.
Right. Yes. Yep.
Don't
absolutely
be the parent who undermines the other one constantly.
Yep.
Because then it really does create an environment where the kids grow up thinking that they don't have to respect the other parent, that they don't have to listen to them, they don't have to believe them.
Yep.
And that's just not good for the long-term health of the family.
Yes. And in the case, if we have a situation where, like, we were in disagreement unknowingly, like, if I had said yes to something, you would have preferred me say no. We come and we have that conversation and we actually decide, you know what, the answer does need to be no. Super important detail of how to go forward is it's really way more beneficial if you let the parent who originally said yes, who now needs to say no, go and have the conversation with the kids. Like, hey, we talked about this and actually we're going to have to change our plans.
Yeah.
Explain to the kids. Don't just be like, hey, we're not doing that anymore, because then you're just going to have a huge fit on your hands.
Sure.
You may still have a huge fit on your hands even when you explain. But usually, most of the time it's more helpful when you have an explanation. So that little detail, that little tool right there is super helpful because it allows that parent who is having to kind of change their answer to keep their voice and stay respectable and, you know, a person that the kids want to listen to. Because if you had gone and said, like, well, I know mom originally said yes, but we decided that now the answer is no, that kind of removes my ability to speak. And so they're like, oh, well, dad is the one who's really, that it again reiterates that point if it is in their mind of, like, dad's the real one in charge here.
Yeah.
So if you're the one who's having to, kind of compromise, if you realize, oh, you know what, actually you're right, we shouldn't be doing this, you should be the one to go and have that conversation with your kids so that they see, they can see the whole process. And it's not just like, well, dad's in charge of mom too. or mom's in charge of dad too. So they're the one who has the real say.
Yeah. It's been really important for us that our kids grow up fully believing that we're a team, that they know mom and dad are a team, that we are not to be divided and conquered,
right?
That we can't be divided and conquered.
Yeah, that's another thing too that comes as a result of a house divided is the kids are actually, they end up ruling the house.
Sure.
Because they learn how to work the system.
Yep.
And so they get what they want. And it can quickly become chaos when the kids are running the roost.
For sure. Yeah. Kids
ruling the roost.
Ruling the roost.
I don't even know if that's a figure of speech, honestly.
So. That sounds right.
We'll go with it.
And we want to mention, too, that we are talking about all of this in the context of a house where the parents are still married and present and living together.
Yeah.
We know that there are a lot of different potential dynamics and a lot of, I feel like I keep using the word nuance, but a lot of room for like nuance and exploring how this could look. Let's say if mom and dad are divorced, or you know, there's just a lot of different elements that could be added to this.
Yes.
Right now, for the sake of this episode, we are talking about this within the context of how things ought to be approached in a home where mom and dad are married and they're present, living together.
Yeah.
But I have a favor to ask for everybody listening. First, if you are listening on any audio platform, if you could do us a huge favor, and if you have found any value in our content, if you could leave us a good review, that's a really small thing that you can do that helps us in a really big way. Also, if you're watching this on YouTube, if you could do us a huge favor and like this video and subscribe, that is also a very small thing you can do that helps us in a really big way. But that is going to be it for this episode.
Yep.
Alrighty.
All right.
Once again, my name is Brian.
And I'm Katie.
And we're making history. We'll see you next time.